Division 08 is for openings. In that, you would have doors, projectile resistant glazing. When we do windows, just about everything we're doing now is 3/8 and 5/8. We always want to have two different glass thicknesses, and you'll learn more about that when we do windows tomorrow. We can do fire-rated windows in any one of our doors, and we are not limited to size. We've tested at a UL facility, and we can put any size window, but we can't use our standard aluminum frame. We have to use a special steel frame that we've developed. But given that, it used to be you can only have 100 square inches. Now we can have any size fire-rated window. The side light next to the door is called a side light. You saw detail that earlier. And the window over the door is called the transom. We do supply both of these. Typically, they would be with split frames like the doors, but they could also be fixed frames. All right, I'm going to hit on split frames again because this is an important sales feature. We provide a split frame as a standard. Only one other door manufacturer offers this. That would be IAC. This is a very important sales feature, and it's a benefit of our door design. And you should be aware of this because if a contractor calls up and he needs the doors because we're building the walls in our door, with our door and frame, they don't need the frame of the doors there until the walls are built. We could practically be the last thing installed in the building. Because it's the two-piece split frame and because it wraps the jamb, these can be installed after walls are built. But general contractors don't know that. They're used to dealing with hollow metal. And so a lot of times that hollow metal frame for a hollow metal door is a fixed frame, and the wall actually gets built around that frame. And that's why they'll say, hey, we need the frames there. Well, we can't do that. We won't do that because our doors are matched and pre-hung to their frames. So we just can't do that. But again, if you explain this to your contractor, your customer, and they understand it, you'll see that it buys us some time for delivery. Okay, so that's what we just was talking about. So you got to remember, this is a very important feature. It's an important sales feature. It's important from a project management standpoint. Somebody can go ahead with their project. We're not going to hold them up because they can put the doors in towards the end of their construction. Again, remember this detail. You may want to print a picture of it in the future. You can use that to explain to your customers. All right, so we have two methods of installing our doors. We have the A installation and we have B installation. The A is the most commonly used. This is pretty hard to read, but this is what a installation drawing would look like. So I've broken that down, which you'll see in a second. Let me go back once. If you look at this detail, you can see that we're wrapping the jamb here, right? Hopefully you can see my cursor moving. And we wrap it at the head. That's the A installation. On a B installation, we butt up against the jamb. If you look at curtain wall doors, like going into a drugstore or a door going into a school, those are typically a B, for us, a B-type installation. That is, the frame doesn't wrap the opening, it just butts up against that brickwork. So we can do that. This shows it a little bit better. On the left, you can see we're wrapping it. That's an A installation. That's the head and sill. And at the right, there's the installation B. And again, on the two section views, you can see the A wrapping and the B butting up. So this is what it looks like in better detail. These are important drawings for you to be familiar with because here you're seeing the rough opening width and the clear opening width. The rough opening width is the opening width that the contractor has to build for us to be able to give them the clear opening they want, because you can see on the left, our frame takes 2 3/4 inches of airspace, and same thing on the right. So if they want a 3-foot wide door, they're going to need a 3-foot 5.5-inch clear opening. So that's what we're talking about when we're saying the difference between a clear opening width and the rough opening width. So sometimes if there's an existing opening, we can build our door to fit that rough opening. If it's a new project, we basically are telling the contractor not only what size to build this opening, but we're also showing them how to frame that out. And that's why we need the partition details that I talked about earlier, because then we can send them a drawing that he can give to this carpenter so it'll match what they're expecting to see. So the wall thickness, we also show on our drawings, that you see that on the right here. Our drawings would show this. It would show a clear opening height, rough opening height. Again, the difference is the 2 3/4 for the seals and the frame. This is the top of the drawing. Just we're giving them plenty of information to go off of. And this is a detail we show to give a little bit more clarity to it. I want you to pay attention to two numbers here. The 1/2 inch is a typical return that we get back to the wall. See how the steel is bent a little bit. That provides some strength and rigidity there. Sometimes people will ask us, how deep is that? So there it is, 1/2 inch. And the frame as a standard is 2 inches. Don't tell manufacturing I told you this, but there have been cases where we've made those 4 inches because they had some detail they wanted to make. We can do it, but it's a special and try to avoid it if we can. All right, so here's the difference. Now this is the B. See how we're butting up to the opening? So they have this drywall construction. This wood trim goes in. Typically we call that out that somebody else has to do that. That's a nailer that the door gets secured so you can see where the anchor is. But you see, instead of 2 3/4, it's 4 1/2 because you not only have the frame and seals, but you also have that 2 inch return of the frame. So again, we've got the B installation and the A installation. The majority of what we do is A, but you should be aware of this. So we provide these same type of drawings for the B with the different dimensions. Again, here the 1/2 inch doesn't matter, but we factor that in when we're figuring out how to build the frame to fit this scheduled wall thickness. All right, next thing you should know is door swing. You can determine the swing of a door by putting your back against the jamb on the hinge side. So picture the room you're in right now. If you put your back up against the jamb on the hinge side, if the door follows your arm and it swings into your room, that's a right-hand door. If your left arm swings into the room, it's a left-hand door. So if the hinges are on the other side. If your arm swings out of the room, it's a left-hand reverse, and if it swings, left arm swings out of the room, it's a right-hand reverse. The normal location to determine the swing of the door is what side the key is on. And these are depicted in our submittal sheet. So this is what it looks like. So upper left-hand corner. In fact, that's the room I'm in right now. If I put my back up against that hinge side, and actually the room I'm in right now is the left-hand reverse. The door would swing into the room. All right. So those are the 4 options. Left hand reverse, right hand reverse. So a left-hand door is the same door as a right-hand reverse. It all has to do with where the key is placed in the lock set. Right-hand door is the same construction as a left-hand reverse. It all has to do with where we put the key. That's another reason we need the floor plans. So typically the key is on the corridor side, so we need to know which side is the corridor side so we can correctly designate the door as a right-hand reverse, so forth, and have the hardware keyed on the correct side. All right, so going to talk about the sales features and benefits of noise barriers doors. All our doors are pre-hung in the factory, and we do it twice. We do it at first when we manufacture it before it's painted, and that's just to make sure the frame alignment is true and plumb and square, and to ensure the hardware lines up. What we do is when after the door has been painted, or veneer's been put on it, We then put the seals on it. We put the hardware on it. We glaze it. We hang it again. We're taking photographs of each completed door while it's hanging. This is to make sure fit and finish is good, to make sure that the latch locks. You know, we are bending metal, so stuff won't line up necessarily. So we make all those adjustments in the factory, and that's something that our competition doesn't. We're going to talk about competition in just a couple of minutes here. We have our own proprietary cam lift hinge. These are factory installed, adjusted to fit for fit and swing. The door hardware is factory installed, even if the customer supplies it. What we've been doing now, and this is a competitive advantage to us because the other guys, IAC, will not send a door out without hardware. We will let our customers supply hardware. Picture if you're bidding to a hardware supplier, he doesn't want to buy hardware from us because he buys it cheaper. So if they will provide us with the hardware, we will not only prep the door. Prepping the door is drilling the holes to match the hardware template. But we, at that point, for us, it's a no-brainer to just go ahead and install the hardware and make sure the fit and finish and everything lines up. So if you have a customer who demands that they want to supply the hardware, we'll work with you on that. But the caveat on this is we have to have that hardware in hand during the design phase so that we have the correct templates to drill the holes, and we have to have the hardware. And you have to give us enough time to do it. The stuff can't, we find out that they want the doors in 2 weeks. It's too late to send us the hardware and expect us to get that installed. It's too late. So at the very beginning of the job, if we've established that you or your customer is going to supply the hardware, we're okay with that. But we've got to have the hardware in advance. And by the way, you guys talk to John about this. This might be a way to be more competitive on some jobs where you guys buy the hardware and avoid our markup. We have magnetic jam and head sound seals. At the end of this, we're going to show you a new project, new door we've come up with a new type of seal. But the point is that our seals are factory installed, adjusted, and inspected. That's not true of our competition. Our windows are factory glazed. When I write up a quote, I include all these lines and I underline everything. I make sure that my customer knows that the hinges are factory installed, that the hardware is supplied by us and is factory installed, that the seals and the windows, we supply the glass and install it. Key point, when you try to sell our doors, we're not going to be the cheapest door out there, but you can upsell these features. The door arrives at the site fully assembled. There's no field assembly required. Even the bottom seal, which is mortised into the door, is factory installed. It's a field adjustable seal, which ships to the site in the up position to protect it during construction. Show you detail here in a second. Couple critical things here. If you're out at a job site, if you see some other trade has propped open our door, you need to talk to the general contractor right away. If they're wedging anything underneath our door or see this a lot, they'll run an electrical cord under our door. If our bottom seals are down to affect the good acoustic seal, they're going to put, they're either going to damage the Teflon tape that covers that seal, or they're going to damage that bottom seal. And the only way to repair it is to come and take the door off the hinges, lift it up off the hinges, and replace it. And it's expensive. And that shouldn't be at your expense. It's certainly not going to be at our expense. So you guys have to be, guys and ladies, have to be aware of what's going on out there at a job site and make sure that the best case is to leave the door seals up until the end of the job. The downside of that is it might require an extra trip to the site to set the bottom seal. You definitely have to set the door bottom prior to any field acoustical test or project turnover. If a door includes a window, the window glazing is factory installed. We already said that. The reason this is important is our competitors other than IC do not do that. On doors that have a closer, that closer arm sticks out about 6 to 8 inches, so we can't ship a door with the closer already installed. But to facilitate the installation and take away any uncertainty about what could happen during the installation of it, we install a plate. So we need to know if the door is going to have the closer on the push side or the pull side. And once we have that information, we install a plate that's part of the hardware package. So that doesn't have to be done in the field. And we install it in the correct place. And then when it's time to install the closer, it only takes the installation people about 10 minutes to install that closer. So it speeds up that installation and takes away any uncertainty. So when we're talking about adjusting the bottom seal, for those of you who aren't familiar with our door, we have a mortise that is, it's built into the bottom of the door. Well, there's a metal boot, and that metal boot can slide up or down through the use of a set screw that's used to adjust that seal. In there is the boot is filled with a loose foam for some sound absorption and dampening within the cavity. But then there's a neoprene compression seal at the bottom, and it's Teflon coated. It's got a tape on it that allows it facilitates sliding of that door as it first opens across the threshold or a floor. So when a door ships to you, that screw's been loosened, that boot is pushed all the way up in that mortise cavity. So that bottom seal is equal to the bottom edge of the door. That leaves a big noise gap or a leak underneath there. All right, if somebody wants to run a cord underneath, that's no issue. But when it's time to turn this project over or to have an acoustic test, there's a set screw on either side of the door at the edge. You loosen that, allow that seal to drop into place, and then tighten it, and you now have set your door seal to fit the opening. And when it's properly adjusted, you can't fit a business card underneath there. It'll be tight enough. You've got the whole weight of the door compressing that seal, and it makes a very good compression seal. Talk about competition for a minute here. IAC does it this way, but other competitors like Overly, Krieger, they don't. They'll have a seal that is attached to the face of the door, and you've all seen these things. It's an automatic door bottom. It's got a little trigger mechanism so that when the door closes against the jamb, the trigger is depressed, and it releases a tension from a spring typically, and the seal drops down. Well, the only thing sealing that door is just the weight of that little aluminum channel and that seal material. Compare that to having a 250-pound or 300-pound door that's pressing a seal against the floor. This is why we get much better acoustics on our door. The weak link is in the corners, and we do address that with a separate seal, but this gives us a big advantage over other doors. One of the things that we started doing back in the day one is we provide each door with its own installation drawing as opposed to a sheet that's got maybe 6 doors on it. This simplifies the approval process. The door ships with that drawing to simplify the receiving and staging process. The drawings are included with the shipment for installer to use. We actually, typically if we're going to photograph it, we'll have a copy of that drawing right on the door. This makes it much easier to go through the approval process. Now, you may have 15 or 20 drawings as part of a package, but that's why we do it. This really simplifies it for you to check the drawings and for the architect and the contractor. The doors and frames that are match marked, each door should be used with its corresponding frame. You can't mix frames and doors. Although they're 2 307 doors are basically identical, there can be little inconsistencies because, again, we're bending metal, punching it, forming it, and then you're mounting the hardware. Little adjustments can be made when we're pre-hanging that door that just make it easier if you keep the door with the appropriate frame. Our doors and frames come with a standard 1-year warranty. We can offer a 3 or 5-year warranty if this helps secure an order. So just ask John. Now, some of our competitors, in particular Krieger, they actually build their frames at one factory and they build their door slabs at another. And so they'll ship the frames. Remember the contractors, hey, I need the frames, need the frames. So they ship the frames, and then weeks later, the door slab shows up, and somebody has to put that whole mess together. Well, how do you think that works acoustically? Not real well. And it's a real quality control problem for fit and finish and acoustic performance. Other manufacturers, Overly is one, they ship the whole door as a kit of parts. So that's why it's important for us to highlight that we are factory installed hardware, factory installed glazing, factory installed seals and so forth. What happens is the door comes as a box of literally parts. The guy has to assemble the frame. He then has to put the seals on it. He's got to mount the hinges, typically with some shim plates. You know, if it doesn't line up the first time, he's got to take it off and reshim them. And after about the 4th door, I think they give up and they just hang that thing, and then they don't work. Right? So where's the quality control on that? It's all up to the installer. Overly and Krieger typically don't install their own doors. They do in some cases. They do have installers. But again, it's all being done out in the site where we're doing it in the factory under controlled conditions, and then we pre-hang it. So it's an important sales feature that you should be aware of. Again, with us, no field assembly is required, and it has to be emphasized in a sales presentation. Because what it comes down to is who guarantees the field performance of site-assembled doors. Now, on government jobs, like a school, anybody can bid that job. We can be specified, but anybody can bid that job. So it's very important that you press these issues to the contractor. Architects are fully aware of the shortcomings of those other manufacturers, which is why they prefer not to specify them, because they know they don't work out in the field. Too often they fail. So the higher the performance requirement, you get into our STC 54, 56, or 60 doors. If it's a studio, performing arts, things where people are making money off the enterprise, it's important to have guaranteed field performance, and it makes that whole sales effort that much more important and easy to sell on. When it comes to a school, unfortunately, sometimes it's price. You can't win that argument, but you can win it with the contractor when he realizes he's going to have single source responsibility. So you're aware of it. Our frame is the same for all our STC door thicknesses. That is, we make a 2.5-inch thick door and a 3.5-inch thick door. Those doors use the same frame. The NIC 70 door, we'll talk about in a minute, is actually a 5-inch thick door. That has a different frame. It's got a 3rd seal on it. So the largest leaf size for our standard architectural doors is either a 4-foot by 12-foot high leaf or a 5-foot by 10-foot high leaf. And this has to do with the weight of the doors and what the hinges and frame can support. Larger doors must be heavy-duty doors. And we're going to discuss heavy-duty doors and special doors tomorrow. So the STC ratings we have an NIC 70 door. We could not get a STC rating. This is close to an STC 64. It's higher than they can actually rate in the acoustic labs because their labs just can't handle that high of noise reduction. We'll talk tomorrow about how we tested these to get this performance. But when you should be aware that when we tested this door in our own facility up there in Libertyville, we did it for the State Department. I think it was a Richard Von Lang project. And the State Department actually came in and witnessed, we sent them our results. They came back and witnessed us doing the test. Then they did more tests. without, they wouldn't let us watch how they tested it. And they said, yeah, we passed. That's what we got. They said it was equivalent to a 64. But typically what we're seeing, STC 56, it's a 3.5-inch thick door. I know the weight looks like it's a lot. It's very heavy for the installers, but it's easy, relatively easy to open. We have an STC 54, STC 52, an STC 50. We actually have a 51. Our 48 is 2.5 inches thick. We've got a 45. All these 2.5 and 3.5-inch thick doors use the same frame. It's just how we build the door leaf, what we put inside it, the mass we add to it. You can see the mass goes up quite a bit. We can do an 1.75-inch double compression seal door. Frankly, it's as expensive as us making the STC 48, so a lot of times we'll just swap that out unless that 1.75 is critical. Same thing is true of the STC 40. By the time we make that, it's just as expensive to make the higher rated door, so we're better off going with a higher rating. Now, we did talk to some of you earlier. We talked to you about that door we have with the concealed hinges. We're actually installing some of those at a studio. Well, we're not ready to release that yet. I thought it'd be released 1.5 years ago, but we're getting ready to release that to you. We've also developed a new type of a door seal that I'm going to share with you here in a few minutes, which is going to really be something that you're going to like to see. But these are our basic door offerings right here. This little cheat sheet I put together a couple of years ago, it needs to be updated. After the presentation, I'm going to send to Dave Novak and Jay Ford this. I'm going to send you some additional information that can be presented to each of you. Some of you, I think, remember we had a desk reference guide that we developed. Well, we're doing a new one. It should be ready, we hope, by June, so that you'll have a desk reference guide. It'll also be an electronic version where you can go through and find all this information. So it'd make it easier while you're sitting there talking to somebody, you can look stuff up and find what you need. So again, when we're talking the design features of our doors, we have an adjustable mortise Teflon coated bottom compression seal. We include a mortise box for the hardware. We have internal reinforcement for door closers. We can provide single leaf, double leaf, unequal leaves, multi-leaf, bifolding configurations. We can do a small leaf and a bigger leaf. We can do a Mr. Ed configuration. That's like the one that was I showed you from DePaul. So you're talking to an architect or a consultant, and can we do this? Chances are we've done it. If we haven't done it, we'll certainly entertain it. So if you run into something that you don't see here, don't shy away from bringing it to John's attention. Doors can be flush or with windows. Earlier, I told you about some of the standard window sizes we have. This is actually on our individual door drawings. We'll highlight the dimensions. We'll highlight the what it looks like in the door, and we'll show it on the door drawings. So on the left, you've got your 10 by 10 or 12 by 12. In the middle, you got your narrow, half light, full light. On hardware, our standard is cam lift hinges, typically 2 per door. We do put more on wider and higher doors, and that becomes our limitation. Our standard hardware is the Schlage 9000 series. Again, I've got about 30 slides that we're not going to do today because we were limited time-wise. I can do it as a presentation if Jay and Dave want me to down the road, but I'm going to send it to you, and it'll show you an individual data sheet for all of our standard hardware. There's a special back set that's required for our lock, and you should be aware of it. We will use other hardware other than our standard, but sometimes the lead time is long because standard hardware is 1 3/4 inches in the commercial market, and our hardware has to be 2.5 or 3.5 inches. So they have to put a thicker fasteners and pin that goes through the door. There is a lock manufacturer out there called Best Lock. We try not to use them because if the project is in, let's say the project's in Baltimore, we have to use the Baltimore sales rep. And we're over here in Illinois. It just creates incredible time delays. They don't get the thickness right. It's just been very difficult. So we prefer not to use best. We have had some luck getting around the local guys, but if we can avoid best lock, we will. If we have to do it, we'll do it, but we prefer not to. As I mentioned earlier, we will prep for hardware supplied for others. We prefer not to. We prefer to do the whole thing. But if it helps get the job, we will prep the hardware. We charge for that service, whether we're supplying the hardware or not, because there's drawings involved and there's programming of equipment and so forth. And our thinking is it's a small price for us to absorb, small cost for us to absorb to install the hardware. The trade-off is then we're sure it's going to work and you're not going to have problems in the field. So if you're going to supply the hardware or your customer's going to supply the hardware, we'll do it. But again, we want it in-house and we're going to install it. Now, when we talk about a mortise lock set, that's what it looks like. All right. If there was a cylindrical lock set, all you would have is this handle going through the door. And we won't use cylindrical lock sets. We'll talk about that in a minute here. But this is what a mortise, this is a Schleg. This is what a typical hardware data sheet looks like that I'm going to make available to you. The mortise lock goes into a mortise box that's built into the door. So even if a door is shipped with no hardware, let's say they want a pull handle, we typically do have a mortise box in there so you can add a lock after the fact. I'm going to date myself here, but back in the 80s when I was selling IAC doors, they would have mortise locks in it, and it wasn't unusual for us to buy a lock, get it adjusted for the thicker door thickness, and install the locks ourselves. It took them years to come around to realization that they should be supplying hardware, and now they won't supply doors without hardware, and that's our advantage. So again, mortise lock includes, you got the latch, you got the lock, and you got here this handle. If you're supplying just the handle, you'll see that's called a cylindrical lock set, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So we have these drawings available. Again, this is more for internal use, but you should be aware that when you have a customer, if you're going to buy the hardware, we'll help you with it, right? If your customer says, no, we're doing the hardware, you need to get these drawings to them so that they properly adjust the pins that go through here and make the hardware for our Walton, our door thicknesses. So again, if you're going to provide the hardware, we'll detail what you need. But if your customer insists they're going to do it, you need to get them these drawings, and you can get them from our engineering group D3. All right, I mentioned that cylindrical lock set. A cylindrical lock set is just a handle, goes on either side of the door. We will not use that. Period, end of discussion. There's no negotiation on that. And this is due to the door weight. It's too easy for them to break off while in use. So we just won't do it. The thinner doors, we might be able to use those in the future. But for the time being, on our 2.5, 3.5, 5-inch thick doors, we just will not use cylindrical lock sets. In some applications, typically more of the heavy duty, you'll see there's going to be more photographs when I do quiet slide and heavy duty doors. We've actually built drop-down clamps within the door to provide additional acoustics and air tightness or blast resistance. The standard closer we use is the LCN 4041. There's an optional one that's cheaper. It's called the Falcon. It's just a knockoff. It's identical to the LCN. We will not use the Falcon if an LCN is called for. We won't substitute the Falcon. But if somebody's just looking to save money and says, hey, put your standard closer on there, we can use the Falcon. It's a couple $100 cheaper. Now, the other big closer name that you're going to see out there is called the Norton. We won't use a Norton because the advantage of the LCN is there's just enough give in the arm of that it will flex up and down as the door lifts and closes with the cam action of the hinges. The Norton doesn't do it, and it typically starts leaking oil right away. You know, these all have oil. They're hydraulically driven, and you can adjust them, but for how fast it'll close. But we just have found that the Norton's not a good closer. So we've never had any problem substituting out LCN for Norton. When we use a coordinator, that's the thing I showed you that closes the double leaf doors. That's called it's called a coordinator. We get that from a company called Dorma. The standard panic exit device we use is the Von Duprin. It's a model 9975. Again, on the hardware presentation, there's data sheets for all of these. The standard automatic door opener we use is a Condor model by a company called Motion Access. There are weight and size limitations on this, so before we commit to it, we have to know what size door they want and what the STC rating is, so we can see if the Condor will work. But it's kind of like when you walk into a building and you see that the handicap button, you press that, and the door opens. That's kind of automatic opener we're talking about. On thresholds, we offer aluminum as a standard, but we can provide steel. Our doors will seal against the concrete floor or against tile or wood. The problem with that is as that door opens, the seal drags for the first 3 to 4 inches, and against concrete, it could start getting ripped. It could start wearing on the hardwood floor. So you really should put a threshold in there. And we're seeing that on most specifications now. There's an aluminum threshold that goes underneath the frame and the door bottom sits on. If it's a carpeted application, we must have a threshold. We don't want to try to seal against some loose carpet that could allow sound to pass underneath it. All right, following slides are going to show you how we differentiate noise barriers from other doors. Other manufacturers don't include these features. These do cost more money to pay up for the specifier and end users and field performance. So these following slides are in our standard specifications. The primary benefit that you should be selling is field performance, not lab testing. And the reason for it, in a lab test, it's a perfect condition. You set up for it. The first time we tested our door at Riverbank, I can tell you we were hoping for a 51 or a 52. We got a 50, and it just took the wind out of our sails. We were just so disappointed. I remember John Finnegan and I being out there. And the guy said, don't worry. Overley was here last week. They tested the same door 28 times. That's $700 a test, guys. 28 times, and they finally got a reading that they liked, and that's what they published. Okay, so how realistic is that? What you want to guarantee is field performance. Consultants certainly understand this. Again, how can the GC count on somebody else guaranteeing a door when it's assembled by a third party? The other thing that's important is we have current independent laboratory testing, and ours is conducted to current ASTM standards. Other people who shall remain nameless out of Aurora have testing that dates back to 1985. The standards were different. The test method was different. The equipment was different. They tested in their own lab. Their test data is signed by their own people. It's not even witnessed by independent. One of them actually says these aren't real numbers, these were calculated. You have to be familiar with what our competitors have as well as what we have. Our point when you're talking to a consultant or an architect is we have current test data that was done in independent labs, and you don't have to denigrate the competition, just point out we have current data. Field test results are also available to help aid your credibility in your sales effort. So again, getting back to the important sales features. Split frame. This is a terrific feature of our door. The fact that all these things are factory installed, that's what you want to sell. You want to hit on this, hit on this, hit on this. These are important. This should be in your quotes. And by the way, we have quote templates. Some of you have already used them. We have quote templates you can use that have all this in there, and you just change some of the information, like who this sold to is, project name, quantities, and prices. Again, it's important to point out that the assembly of the doors, frames, and hardware is done at the factory with quality control looking at it. We also offer specialty construction doors. We can do bullet projectile rated. There's two rating services or standards. There's NIJ, which is the National Institute of Justice. That goes up to a level 4. This you would see on government projects. This is the kind of thing that the people around Washington, D.C. would see typically would be NIJ. There's also a standard by Underwriters Lab. This is more for architectural projects. NIJ's level 4 and UL's level 8 are the same rating. It has to do with the type of projectile, the muzzle velocity, and the weight. It's basically 30-06 with a titanium armor-piercing pin on the inside. And we've actually did a project, Huff did a project at, it was for a SWAT training facility at DuPage County College. And so they've got a gun range on a college campus. That's bad enough. So all the swing doors are bullet rated. They didn't realize that they had people unloading weapons, students walking by going, what's going on here? SWAT guys with weapons. So they ended up putting in an overhead door so they could drive an SUV in, unload their weapons, and pull the car out. And then it's an actual live gun range in there. And we actually, in that case, you'll see it tomorrow, made a bullet-resistant vertical lift door up to that NIJ level 4. We also have UL labeled 90-minute doors. That's also referred to in the industry as a B label. We are set up. I think testing is set up. It's still probably a couple months away to test both single leaf and double leaf up to 180 minutes. Should be an A label. We also do have a 20-minute fire label for a wood veneer door. That typically we see out in California at schools, but it's going to be coming throughout the country, we're sure. We also could do a pressure blast rated doors up to 1 PSF, 1 pound per square foot. Depending on the blast rating, the swing is critical. If it's a swing in or swing out, if it's a swing in, it's easier because the door stops, help take up some of the force of the blast. If it's an outswing, we have to augment it with like those drop-down seals or extra pins to withhold that blast pressure. So the hardware is critical. All right, I want to talk a little about competitors, almost done here. Some competitors make the doors and frames at 2 different facilities. We talked about that. They get matched in the field. Others ship them for field assembly by others. Most of our competitors do not include hardware or glazing. The GC has to subcontract that work out to another subcontractor. So here you are, you're talking to the GC. Yeah, our doors are more expensive, right? But you don't have to buy the glass from your glazing guy. You don't have to have some other person trade put it in. You don't have to buy the hardware from somebody else. Your trades guys, they can either slip our door into the opening in about an hour. The opening's good. Or they can spend 8 to 10 hours field assembling somebody else's door that comes with a box of parts. These are important sales features, and you have to make the GC aware of it. It gets down to who ensures the whole system will work properly and perform, and there's not a single source responsibility. These are all powerful arguments in favor of using the quiet swing door. So let's talk about competitors for a minute. IAC. Our doors are like their doors. I used to sell them for however long. We modeled our doors a lot after IAC's doors. We think we've made a lot of improvements and adjustments to it. So we do have our own door. But IAC's the granddaddy that started the door business back in the 60s. They have a great brand. They've been in good existence since the beginning of the noise control industry. They get specified on a lot of projects just because they've been around for so long. It's interesting that when they went through their bankruptcy, and we suddenly started hearing from people in desperation. We'd already been in existence about 8 years, and people weren't aware that we existed because they were just, IAC is the only brand that they went to. So they show up on a lot of specs, but we're now seeing our name on virtually every one, and very seldom do we get rejected on a project. But they are the granddaddy. That's a big strength of theirs. Under this new management, under SoundSeal, they've done a great job of streamlining the engineering and manufacturing process. We are going to benefit from that. We're going to benefit from the engineering. It's not ready to be rolled out yet, but we're going to have, the two companies are separate. IAC and Noise Bears are separate. Sales, engineering are in different towns, different locations. The manufacturing has been put together. You can always bring clients in to see the manufacturing. You can set that up through John. But what we're working towards is, if once we have the door information, there's going to be a estimating department that's going to generate the pricing for you much quicker than in the past. I could get to it, or John could get to it. So that's going to simplify the process there. And then the drawings are going to be generated by computers. We've been spending the last 6 months doing a lot of work on the programming and putting all our details into this CAD program that will actually generate the drawings. So they'll come out quicker, and we think it'll also cut down some of the errors that we see on drawings. So they've done a good job of doing that. They do make a good product, but they're very selective about what jobs they'll quote. We find that if somebody goes to them with a request for a quote for something that's due tomorrow, they may very well decline to bid it. If it's something that's a little out of the ordinary, they'll just decline to bid it. Where we still have that freedom and ability to do that, and that's one of the things I think that differentiated Noise Bears from the very get-go, is that we would try things and take on new designs and products. So we do see IAC in architectural swing door projects. They have better UL fire ratings. They do have an STC 55. That's a 30-year-old test report. They got an ST 60. That's a 20-year-old test report, and an STC 61. That used to give them a competitive advantage on some projects. But now that we have those, that doesn't preclude us from bidding, right? And our test data is current. Now, what's interesting, just to show you how separate we are as companies, I thought that, once we combined with them, we'd be able to sell their fire-rated doors. Nope. We're actually spending about $80,000 to do fire testing. So our fire test reports will be independent of IAC. So we really are two separate firms. So that's why I say, if some things, if there's a specialty, we have the ability to take it on. They just won't. They won't even test their doors at this point. They're not even interested in updating their tests. So originally they had a very broad product mix. Frankly, now we're not certain of where their focus will be under the new ownership. That is, SoundSeal that's had them here for a couple of years. But they've done a great job of streamlining that plant and the engineering process, and we are going to benefit from that. Now, their weakness that you can go against is that a lot of their old reps, consultants, and customers know they were bought by equity firms whose goal is to flip the company in a few years, so people were wary. Not the case anymore. I think we're in here for the long haul. But in the past, there's still a lot of people out there that got burned when they went bankruptcy under former ownership. The market also understands that this is now the third set of people manufacturing the products. As I've said, they won't upgrade their testing. It's out of date. We've got some consultants, well, I won't specify them until they get retested. They were purchased last year. This is the fourth time they've been sold. They did drop or lose several more reps, particularly after bankruptcy. In fact, they just dropped their very large rep out in California because they didn't think he was doing a good enough job on specs. So he's now our rep, and it's like sometimes you wonder what they're doing. From what we've seen, for the most part, they don't let their remaining reps buy and sell projects. You guys can either take jobs on commission or you can take buy and sell. That is, you buy it and then you resell it. They're only allowing them to take projects on a commission basis. So they control the sales and they'll lower the commission that they're paying. So they got some disgruntled people out there. I don't think they get a lot of leads because of their name. They've been out there a long time, but they're not out there actively pushing the market. This has resulted in the reps making less money. So again, they're just not pushing as hard as they were. So when this happened, when they went bankrupt, we were ready for them, and we did pick up some of the people that became our reps. Back in the day, they had management that had no idea their products, markets, customers. They lost their tribal knowledge of how to build doors. We're actually sending some of our installers, our fabricators actually have transferred. So we want to keep that knowledge. Plus that with some of the things that they're doing now, they just don't understand how this is such a relationship-oriented business. So if you take care of your customers and stand behind the product, that relationship will win you a lot of projects. Some other competitors, well, one other thing about IC, they're the only manufacturer that sells a fully assembled door like us. They are formidable, not as formidable as they could be with new test data. They have reps where we have reps, so we're at no disadvantage. They actually have more reps throughout the country, so they'll never be going direct. So there's places that you can, you always be competing against another rep. Overly is probably our largest competitor for acoustic swing doors. Overly is most well known for blast-rated doors, but Overly's out there. They specialize in the blast sound and other specialty use doors. This is the company I was talking about. The door ship is a box of parts, and the installer has to assemble it in the field. Consultants do not like to specify these. They hate it when these guys get on there on the job because of the poor field performance. So this is a competitive advantage for us. There's another company out in California called Security. They're a bigger player in schools and low performance doors, particularly out in the school market in California. We're not that concerned with the STC 40 to 45 doors, to be honest with you. They're big in the government SCIF market, but like Overly, their doors ship as a box of parts and the installer has to assemble them. Now, what is an advantage to us is they generally go to market only through door and hardware packages. So if you have a job that's got 2 or 3 doors, maybe you're going to have to go through a packager. But if there's 20, 30, 40 doors, there's no reason for us, for the GC, to spend a markup that a door packager is going to put on it. They might put 40 or 50% on a door. So we've always had a lot of projects, even back when Huff was representing IC, where we would sell doors directly to the GCs and go around the door packagers. So that's a big competitive advantage to us. Krieger is the other one. This is the outfit that makes the doors and frames in 2 different locations. Again, they will only sell through door packagers. And again, it's competitive advantage to us. We'll actually be lower priced. We're more expensive than them door to door, but again, we've got more features, better performance. But when you bring in the fact that they're going through a door packager, we'll be very competitive to them. Two new players over the last few years are Clark Door. It's an English company. They're attempting to gain a foothold in the U.S. by hiring. They started off by hiring the former product manager and door salesperson from IC a few years ago. That guy's gone now, but they manufacture in England. So shipping and exchange rate are a problem for them. So again, if you see them, this is an advantage. You also see that they're on some sliding doors, and they claim to have a fire-rated sliding door. Can't for the life of us figure that out, but it's not a UL rating, so we don't really think that that carries much weight. We'll talk about that on sliding doors. Wenger. Wenger is well-known manufacturer of modular music practice rooms, but they also provide other music-related facility equipment. Instrument storage lockers, music stands, risers, all kinds of stuff. They've done an excellent job of marketing to school music directors and educators, and they now are offering sound doors. I've checked on their website. They don't have a full line of STC rated doors. Door testing is not even available. Like, they'll tell you they have an STC 55, and then you look on their website and it said no test available. They don't have they have a mortised bottom compression seal, but there's a plate across the door with fasteners that are visible that you take off to have access to it. So it's just not a very aesthetically pleasing door. We've been successful in competing with Wenger. If we get the doors separate from any music practice rooms or other equipment. Now, with all these names here, Wenger, Clark, Krieger, Overly, I highly recommend all of you to go online and take a look at their websites and be familiar with them. The best way you can point out our benefits is knowing your competition. You've got to know your competition. You got to know our product. But if you know what the customer says is their strength is, or you spot their weakness, you can sell against it. Again, you don't have to run them down. You just need to know where they are in the marketplace. So highly recommend that you go online and look at their websites. We've developed for your use a sales call questionnaire. You don't need to take notes on this. I'm going to send this to Dave Novak and Jay Ford after the presentation here today, and they can give it to you. But these, for each of our product lines, these are just questions that if you ask, if somebody calls you and says, tell me about your doors, or I have a need, if you walk through these questions, it's just a simple cheat sheet for you to make sure you include everything. All right, so that would be the end of this presentation, but I've got some exciting news for you. I'm going to keep going, presuming that nobody wants to take a break. I know we're about at the 90-minute range, so this is only going to take about 10 minutes. We have developed, we told you about that door we were calling, actually I forget the old name, now we're going to call it Alexis. We're not ready to release that yet. That's the door with the seals, or with the hinges that are concealed. We'll have something on that shortly here. But we are ready to now sell this. We have this this feature in stock. We're going to actually have a marketing announcement on it, if not this week, next week, so you guys are seeing it in advance. What we're calling this is the Easy Pull Quiet Swing 51 door. Easy Pull is going to be we've already applied for a trademark on that. What this is, you see this kit up here in the picture on the left in the bubble? I'm going to explain what ADA talks about, but we've all had instances where you try to open one of our doors and the magnetic seals have such a force on them, you practically have to put your foot against the wall to pop that door open. That's not just us, right? So we've developed something to overcome that. This quote is from the Southeast ADA Center. It addresses the opening force of the door. What the ADA, American with Disabilities Act, says is that it can't take more than 5 pounds of force to open a door. Right? There's a couple exceptions. Fire doors, exterior hinge doors, latch bolts, and other devices to keep the door gates closed. But there's an anomaly to this law, or this regulation. And what it is, I have to read this for you. The 5-pound maximum applies to the continuous application of force necessary to fully open a door, not the initial force necessary to overcome the door's seal resulting from unequal pressure. Latch bolts must be retracted and other devices that keep doors closed must be disengaged prior to measuring the opening force. Such devices, like the other door and gate hardware, must operate with a maximum 5-pound force, but their operating force is not included in the measure of a door or gate opening force. Okay. What? Is that typical governmentese or what, right? So what it says is you can only have 5 pounds of force to open the door, but they never addressed, they never addressed what it takes to turn a latch or to break the seals. Well, people are becoming concerned with it. We're seeing more and more because we're getting into more applications with young people or handicapped people, schools, public spaces. In the past, the gold standard of sound door design was double magnetic seals, 1960s. That would be IAC. There's one seal on the door that attaches to the frame and one on the frame that engages the door face. Same as we have today, right? It works very well acoustically. It provides 2 positive seals between the frame and the door, and it prevents this area from being a sound leak. That idea was so successful that other manufacturers have emulated, they copied it, to such an extent that's become the standard in the industry. You'll see it on almost all door specs now. Double magnetic seals are called for. So the reality is that double magnetic seals are very difficult to pull open, that is, disengage. The difficulty increases if seals are set in place that's over a weekend, school vacation periods, summer break. I could add to that, if it's an 8-foot leaf or a 10-foot leaf, you've got more magnetic force. And I think all of us have had the experience where you go to open up your freezer and you can't open the thing. You have to put your foot against the refrigerator, to crack open that side-by-side freezer door. Well, that's because that magnet has time to set. Maybe the door hasn't been open for a while. Once that seal is broken, no problem. The door opens with less than a 5-pound pull force. But you have to disengage the seals before the door can open. And we've had more and more people ask us about that, or we've gone out and retrofitted doors. Richard Von Lane gave us a great idea of putting a real thin tape over the seal, so you still got some of the magnetic force, but it reduced the force and made it easier to open. Well, we thought this is just not a good way to be in the marketplace, so we want to be a leader. It's very difficult to open doors due to the strength of the seals. In some instances, it can take significant pull force, which far surpasses the intent of the ADA requirement. This is not as significant of an issue on the push side because one can always use a panic exit device to help push the door open, or you can put your shoulder against the door, but these are not good methods to rely on. So we've developed an enhanced seal design called Easy Pull Compression Seal. It reduces the necessary force to break the seals to less than 3 pounds. Specifiers now have an acoustic seal solution that is not only in compliance with the ADA door pull force requirement, but within the intent of the regulation as well. Owners and users have available to them a safe door seal that doesn't compromise acoustic performance. And here's what it is. We still have our magnetic seal up here by the hinge, but now we're putting this custom designed continuous, it's a silicone compression seal. And when that thing is compressed, and the doors held closed through the use of a latch. We get as good acoustic performance as we do with our double magnetic seals. Our Mike Dott did all the research on this, the design. We did all kinds of 3D modeling. This was, believe it or not, almost a year's worth of effort until we came up with the final configuration of materials and the final composition of it. So what happens is this: when the hardware latch is retracted, the compression seal overcomes the force of the magnetic seal, so the door can be opened easily and with minimal pull force. That is, that compression seal has been compressed. As the latch is retracted, the seal just expands just enough that it breaks the magnetic seal. This new seal can be used on any door. It can be retrofitted into any door we sold since 2018. It can be used on the any noise barrier's door frame in conjunction with a magnetic seal on the door leaf. So why do we do this? Not only do our clients ask for it, but we see a move where they're going to change that ADA wording to address this. So we're going to be ahead of the curve on this. This is something that you can definitely get specified. We're developing new specs for your distribution. It addresses the brake force necessary to disengage the seals. Why is it called easy pull? The name says it all. It makes it very easy to pull open the door. Again, its purpose, it reduces the brake force required to move the door away from the magnetic seal pull, and it makes the door easier to open. All right, so next question. Does this affect acoustic performance? Nope. I'll show you in just a minute. Does it affect the swing force of the door? Nope. Can it be used with commercial hardware enclosures? Yep. Can it be used on wood veneer doors? Yep. Doesn't affect the door at all. All right, so let's talk about acoustic performance. This is the acoustic performance of our Quiet Swing STC 51 door. This is a lab test, right? Here's what we got with this new seal. We're the same across the board except for the 1600 hertz band, where we actually got a slight improvement, 1 dB. So there's no loss of acoustic performance. So what are the applications of this? Any noise barriers STC 45 through 51 door. It can be retrofitted to any door since 2018. So if people are complaining, right now they can buy a retrofit kit. We do know that this will work with our STC 52, 54, and 56 doors, but prior to releasing this to the market, we need to go and have these tested in an independent lab just to make sure we haven't affected the acoustic performance. In our testing in-house, it has not affected the acoustic performance, but we want to get independent labs so consultants will stand behind this. You can use this wherever current magnetic seals can be impediment to sectors of the population, such as children and teens, elderly individuals, physically impaired individuals. So we're talking government facilities, performing arts centers, schools, colleges, universities, any educational type facility. So, all right, it's got to be limitations to this thing, right? So I'm going to name them. The limitations to this is this seal can only be used on a door with a lock set. It can't be used with just push-pull handles because the compression seal, is just proud of the frame. But that's it. There are no other limitations to using this easy pull seal system. Huff has got a job at Steppenwolf. I think we're going to retrofit that design. Actually, they haven't been built yet, but we're switching that over to the easy pull design at the request of the architect. And what you'll be happy to know is there's no cost impact on this. This is going to be offered at our same price. So we think this is going to be very exciting on the marketplace. We think we'll get a lot of attention when we do their marketing blast on this. It's going to give us something that competition is going to have to catch up to. And we think particularly in schools and public facilities, it's very specifiable and it can hold the spec. So with that, I'm done. I 2 minutes more than the allotted 90 minutes. I appreciate it. I know this is a lot of information. This will be available to you. This presentation will be available to you. It'll also be on the web portal. And then later this afternoon, I'll get some of this information to Dave and Jay. Hopefully you're online and you guys can get it out to your group. So with that, we're done. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you benefited from this. Take care.